the first speaker of today's event. It's Lidiya Simak. You've seen her already. Lida is the author of two super practical and useful courses on our platform. And she is a guru of lesson planning and a teacher who knows 1001 way to use flashcards in ELT. She is a Salto trainer and an amazing person. And meet Lida and her session, School Year, Smooth Start for Everyone.
Yula, thank you very much for such a flattering introduction. So I'll try to live up to your expectations. I'll buy you coffee next time. You're so nice today. Okay, everyone, let's start talking. Again, I already asked you to share like what age groups you're interested in to talk about today. So I saw kids, different ages of teenagers, adults. So we will try to talk about everything. Please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. I will try to react to them and talk to you. And because this topic is not very focused, I will talk about everything. If you ask questions, I will probably go deeper into some aspects you are more interested in. I already see some questions. Primary school. Okay, we will talk about the primary school students. Yula, I'm not a host or co-host. Can you please make me one? I can't share screen. Cannot share screen, please help. Okay, thank you very much for writing the age groups. Okay, we will talk about, okay, teenagers, adults, primary. So my favorite when I have to talk about everything. Okay, we will, don't worry. So can you please let me send a message. Okay, just a moment. Okay, so while I'm waiting for help to arrive, so I can do everything now. Excellent. Okay, can you please put a plus in the chat if you can see my presentation? Thank you very much. So let's start talking. Before we start talking, I will tell you a little story. I rarely tell anyone. I started teaching when I was 18. I was still a college student. I was very, very young. And I started teaching in a local, like actually the school that I graduated from. And of course, I was given the worst class ever, to train on. Nobody wanted me to spoil good kids. So I was given the troublemakers. And my first lesson looked like the War of the Worlds. If you ever read the book or saw the film. So actually I was looking at the book, I didn't see what my students were doing. And while I was telling something, they actually started, they took the plastic pens, they started chewing paper and shooting each other. And because they were doing that quietly, I was not looking at them. So I ended up with the class filled in with those chewed paper balls all over, and actually all the walls and the watch over my head covered in those chewed paper balls. And I didn't realize that until the teacher who was teaching after me, found me after my lesson mad and furious, and she started shouting at me and she made me clean the room. I still don't know how I actually managed to continue my teaching career after that. But now I realize that actually that happened because I didn't know how to start with my students. I didn't know what to look at and what to do with them. Hopefully I learned, and I'm very happy if I can share something with you that will make your lives a little bit easier. So what we will start with. So I want to start with asking you, so what are your concerns about the start of a school year? I will give you 40 seconds to write one short sentence in the chat. A little example from me, for example, students misbehave. That's a typical concern. Can you please write your concerns in the chat? I'm sure you do have some, because diagnostic test, classroom management, students don't do homework. Misbehaving, students don't listen, okay. Lack of attention, that's a good one. Weren't able to study online, online, okay, yes, understand you. Ignore the teacher's remark, oh, that's my favorite. Students ignore you or ignore me. No motivation, okay. Tiredness due to online learning, okay. Discipline, online, cameras off. Also, that's a typical problem. We will talk about this. Students feel bored. Discipline. Okay. Methods for keeping students engaged. Okay. You should feel your four skills to conduct anything. Yes. So thank you very much for sharing. I understand that I will try to address knowledge forgotten. Well, unfortunately, it will not be fixed on the first day, but eventually, I think that it's easier to address the knowledge lack than the lack of discipline, because if you don't have the discipline in your room, the learning will not happen. New textbook. If we have time, we will talk about this, Elena. Okay, so here are the situations that I prepared for you. So students don't understand what I'm saying. Might be similar to they ignore, they don't listen. Students don't want to work in pairs or groups. If you use pair work and group work in class, sometimes you might face the situation when you set up a very nice activity, you put them in pairs or you put them in groups and they don't talk. This is one of my biggest fears, actually. This is something that might be my nightmare when I sleep. But hopefully I know some methods how to address all these things. So something important that might help a lot with most of the problems that you mentioned is this. We need to establish class routines. The word routine, when we talk about English, is it something positive or something negative? Can you please put a class plus or a minus in the chat? What do you think about this? Yay, I love teachers. Positive, exactly. So routine in English, this is not something boring, but this is something usual and predictable. So why is it important to have clear, understandable routines in class? Can you please write 1 or 2 words in the chat? They know what to expect. Thank you, Natalia. System. Thank you, Oksana. Structure. Thank you, Anastasia. Discipline, safety. Yes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So forming habits. This is the word I was searching for. When we are in the situation, when we don't know what to expect, this is stress. And the younger we are, the bigger the stress. If you understand what's going to happen, yes, Valeria, nobody gets nervous. If you understand what's going to happen, if the routine is clear for you, this creates a safety environment for students. And when they don't feel scared or nervous, you will have much fewer problems in class. So routines are important. And we will talk about how to establish them and what these routines need to include. So we will start talking about what to do in the very first lesson. So you meet them for the first time. Very high chance that this will be online. the first thing that you have to do is you have to establish clear classroom rules. So if you think about your experience as students, like the teacher might be any kind. I mean, a strict teacher or a funny teacher, whatever teacher. It's always easier if you know what the requirements are, what the rules of the game are. And if students know that, for example, they have to keep their cameras on, and this is the rule. If you establish this rule from the very beginning, it will be so much easier for you, because if you allow them to stay without their cameras when you start teaching them, and then somewhere like a month later or a few weeks later, you start talking about turning their cameras on, it will not work. But if you think about it, it's going to be online, and you know that you might have problems with cameras. Make it a very clear rule. So students need to be aware that when they are in your lesson, their cameras must be on. You have to talk about it. You have to explain why it's important. And if they don't do it, you have to react. Because if you don't follow your own rules, they will not work in class. And the rules that are not followed, they are not rules. So this is a problem. It means that if you establish a rule in class, you have to be consistent. It means if you ask students to turn on their cameras, it means that when they do not turn them on, you have to ask them to do it. If you do it every time, every lesson, all the time, I believe that students get tired of it. They know that you demand the cameras on, and they will do it. There might be some situations when there is a problem, like a person can be abroad and they have nothing, they don't have a camera or something like this. But this should be an exception, and you have to talk about this in class, because this exception, it shouldn't infect the whole classroom. So if they have their cameras, they have to be on. If you set it up as a rule, it will work so much better than not setting it up as a rule. So this is a typical problem, but if you are consistent, it works. My typical example, I don't know if you remember, like 10 years ago, when we had that marshutkas that appeared in Kiev, there was the transport, and it wasn't the government transport, but there was a kind of a private transport. And a lot of people asked them to stop, not on the bus stops, but somewhere. Can you stop near that supermarket? Can you please stop at this crossroads? Can you let me out here? You stopped here. And they did it. And there was a lot of problems with the traffic because like they stopped everywhere and the cars couldn't move because of them. And it looked really chaotic. But then the government, they just adopted the law that those such transport, they cannot stop anywhere but on the bus stops. And because they started busting, you know, those drivers who violated the rule and who broke it, and I think there was a punishment because of that, people actually learned to ask for a stop on the bus stops very, very quickly, because the government was persistent and they were consistent, and they did, you know, they introduced the rules and they stick to it, and they punished people who broke. So it works very well. If you establish the rule, everyone must follow the rule. It works very well if you do. If a student refuses it, what might be done? We will talk about this because, guys, it doesn't mean that you just come to class and you start, you know, a lesson with a very strict person who kind of says, okay, starting from now on, we have these rules. You cannot break. It doesn't work like this. Your students will hate you and they will be right. What you can do is you can create the rules together with class. And what I usually do with my students when I'm talking about kids and teenagers is actually we create the rules together. And I ask them, okay, guys, when I teach you online, do you want to see my face? Or do you want to see an empty black square? Well, the answer is yes, they want to see my face. And I say, okay, guys, and when you talk to each other, do you like talking to black squares or do you like seeing people? They like seeing people. And I say, okay, when I talk to you, do you think I want to see black squares or I want to talk to a person? And I elicit from them that using a camera is actually, it's nice and polite and respectful. Now I'm talking about kind of teenagers. I kind of push them kindly to that idea that having your cameras on is a nice thing to do. And guys, let us make it a rule. You have to have your cameras on. And by the way, together, we can create a punishment for people who break rules. There are lots of interesting examples. For example, well, it depends. They can introduce different punishments. I don't know, they can sing a song or something, or do an extra homework task, whatever. But it's a good idea if you develop it together with your students. So possible consequences for rule violation. So when they still violate the rules, I try to talk to them in person and I explain why this is important. And I ask them to follow the rules. Usually this works. If I have really, really bad cases and I don't have the contact with that student and nothing else works, I can tell that, okay, I'm sorry, but this is the rule and I will have to talk to your parents. Usually this works, but you cannot tolerate breaking the rules, because if one person breaks the rules, it infects everyone and you don't have discipline in your class. Well, unfortunately, this doesn't happen in every class. And it doesn't happen for a couple of reasons. And the reasons we will discuss in the next slide. Just put a mental tick here. I just wanted to show you what you can do with your class. So example from my school life, I still do it, but I don't take pictures. You can sign a contract with your students. This is from the times when I was a school teacher. I still have a couple of photos that on the first day, I met my students. If you have a look, they're like 12-year-olds. So they're young teenagers. And we developed a contract. And if you look at it here, this is what the teacher must do. And you see that we started talking to them about the rules for me. And you see what they wanted from me, normal amount of homework. I promised them not to give too much homework. Mustn't speak, mustn't scream. I'm the person who doesn't scream, so it was easy for me to promise not to scream at them. And the teacher must speak English only. So these were the demands from the students to me. You might feel a bit worried about, okay, how can I allow my students create rules for me? Oh my God. You know, every time they created a stupid rule, for example, when someone said, okay, the teacher, you only put us 12s every time. There was always a student who said, oh, it's going to be unfair, you know? So they regulated the stupid rules inside that classroom. And if they didn't, if they kind of double dared me, okay, the teacher, we want 12s every time. I said, okay, no problem. I can put you 12s. But do you think it's going to be fair? I will put a 12 to a person who works hard, and I will put a 12 to a person who doesn't do anything. If you are not from Ukraine, at 12, this is the highest mark in the Ukrainian school. And this helped me, you know, cause that reaction that the students said, no, this is not a good rule, teacher, let's not put it on the board. And they said, okay, you are, you know, you set the rules for me. Okay, I will not put it on board. Not everyone is happy. So you say you manipulate them. But usually, well, they're nice kids and they will suggest nice and sane things for you. If they suggest something crazy, talk to them, elicit that this is not a good thing to do. And look at the rules that we created together for students. So the rules are must do homework. This is always my rule. Then must speak English, mustn't chat, must be quiet. Can you please mute yourself? I'm sorry, because I hear some noise. Thank you. Mustn't play, I meant, I don't know, mobile phone games or something like this, and mustn't rock chair. That was a crime in my classroom when I was a school teacher, and mustn't chew gums. I was the funny teacher at school because I always knew who had a gum in their mouth, even though they tried not to chew. So that was another moment of humor in my class. So, and we signed this contract. I signed it as a teacher, and you see that there is a student signing it. And I had these contracts with all my students. And if you look at this is one contract. I have another one. They were actually different for each class because each class had slightly different focus. Like here, again, mustn't use gadgets, must do homework. It was very similar, but it was formulated in a different way because I elicited these from kids. These contracts, they work very well with young teenagers. Older teenagers might not be very interested in signing contracts, but if you think that it might work well with them, you can do it. So usually it works very well for younger teenagers and like for, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, because they feel that they have the power and they like feeling that they rule and they create rules in class. So something else you can do, remind students about the rules. So these are the reminders that I took a picture of at grade. So these are the rules that grade teachers use in class. And every time somebody violates the rule, what you can do? Can you see what I'm doing? Do I even have to speak? I can point to the rule and just look at them. So remember, you have to be consistent, right? So you have to remind them to follow the rules, but be nice and encourage them to do that and praise them for following the rules. And when your students know the rules, follow the rules, are reminded about the rules, it's so easy to manage such class. So rules have to be established. If there are no rules, there is no discipline in class. Students don't know how to behave. And, you know, when they grow up, they tend to touch the boundaries and push the boundaries. So they need to know where the boundaries are and they need to know how to behave. Something else you can do is you don't have to, if your students are really, really small and they still don't know English or they cannot read or they're complete beginners, why don't you use pictures? Again, what it means, put your hand up if you want to speak. You can teach them. And something else you can do when you develop the rules, you can create classroom posters. Again, this is the poster from Great Education Center. These are the school rules. By the way, another trick that you can use that works for my students when they say, okay, teacher, why cannot I turn off my camera? I'm a free person. There is a constitution in Ukraine. You know, what I say is, yes, you are a free person. There is a constitution in Ukraine, but there is a constitution in Great Education Center, and we have a school rules that have to be followed by everyone. And one of the school rules is you have to turn your camera on. This is the school policy. This is the argument that might help you in your teaching, which means that this is not you, a bad teacher who created the bad rule that students don't like, but this is the school that have their policies and they have to follow this. Exactly. So that is the first lesson, clear rules that you remind students of. Ideally, you have a poster that they can see. You can write, I don't know, they can draw this poster, by the way, they can make it together. And this is a wonderful activity that help form a team. So I would suggest that your students, they can make this poster together in the first lesson. And that is the wonderful activity that will help you make them feel more comfortable working with each other, which brings us to the next step. They need to know you on the first day and each other. This is very important. If there is just a person we don't know and she's strict and she doesn't smile and she starts, I don't know, opens the book and just starts teaching, this is a scary teacher. But if you start with something like this, who do you think drew this? who is the author of this masterpiece. Yeah, that's me. Do you think it took me a lot of time? You can just shake your head. 5 minutes. I just took a marker and drew it and took a picture with my phone, which means I can use it online. Do I look like a talented artist? No, but I have some pictures, and this activity is going. Look at this. This is my emblem. It says something about me as a person. There are 3 pictures. Can you talk to your partner, or can you talk in groups and think what these pictures mean about me as a person? For example, do you think I sell flowers when I have free time? I don't, but I have a little garden on my balcony, and I can actually take a picture of something that I grew on my balcony. Last year, I grew some tomatoes because there was a lockdown and I was bored, and I had a balcony of tomatoes. Next year, I'm planning, this year I have rosemary. Next year, I'm planning to have basil because I like pesto sauce. So do you think it's interesting for students to hear about this, about your teacher? Why not? I would be interested to hear this about my teacher. Here, again, they can think about it. So I like space, and this is my favorite animal. So they discuss it with their partners, and they make ideas. So they make some guesses about me, and we can have some laugh. You know, there could be some humor. You can smile, and it melts the ice between you and between your students. And it actually doesn't say anything personal about me. But this is something nice that puts a bridge between me and my students. This is the easiest way to do, and my favorite, like 1 minute, a marker, a piece of paper. You can do something more sophisticated. A lot of people has already seen there. Like you can put a star in the center and put some pictures around. So it's very similar. You can use pictures, you can use numbers, you can use words. Why I like these activities? Because you can use them even with the students who hasn't learned English yet, or who know very little English, or who cannot read, because you asked me about 4 or 5-year-olds. So you can try, I don't know whether they will work with such small kids, but you might give it a try. The next step, after your students make guesses about the teacher, they do similar stars or drawings about themselves, work in groups, and make guesses about each other. And it helps them melt the ice. And this is important. You might be working in a school where students have been living, I don't know, studying together for all their lives. Still, I remember my childhood. I was a school child, and I have classmates I don't know, studied with for 5 years. And we didn't even say hello to each other because there were different groups who communicated inside my class, but the groups didn't communicate with each other. And there were classmates I never actually talked to. And when I think about it, that is terrible and crazy. But the problem is that we were not properly introduced to each other. We were not, the ice never melted between us. And it's even important to do every year after school holidays, because children grow. And when they become young teenagers, they turn from kids to young teenagers, their attitude to each other change, and they become strangers to each other when they become teenagers. So you have to do such icebreakers every time they have a summer break, because you have to reintroduce them to each other. Some of them change so fast. Like 2 months ago, there was a girl wearing school uniform and, I don't know, looking like a perfect, I don't know, perfect A student. 2 months later, she becomes, I don't know, a punk with, I don't know, pink hair, something like this, strange clothes. So they change a lot, and they need to be reintroduced to each other. You can Google icebreakers in class and online. I will suggest a couple of ideas. Here, I think just, okay. I will suggest a couple of ideas later, but there is an important word that you already heard from you, Lachorna, and from me. So you need to establish rapport. Rapport means good relationships between students and the teacher, and when students have good relationships with each other. Because if you want them, you teach them English. Teaching English means that they have to talk, because they have to speak. This is not maths that you can just, solve problems and not say. Who students speak to in a lesson? Not only to a teacher, they have to speak to each other, because they have to, discuss things, practice their English. And very bad situation when students don't want to talk to each other. And I've had classes like this when they didn't go very well. They didn't get on well with each other. They didn't talk, sometimes hated each other. And I couldn't change their partners. Like, they had a friend they were talking to all the time and sitting next to. And there were kids who were ostracized and nobody wanted to talk to them. And I still had to teach them English. So I had to fix some problems in this class in order to be able to actually teach them. So, and there is a solution for such things. If there is nothing, serious, if there is no serious conflict, all those things can be fixed. And they are fixed by several things. First of all, you have to melt the ice at the beginning. Remember my activities with that star and with that emblem and so on. So when kids do things like that, they feel more comfortable around each other and they can start talking to each other. Apart from this, you have to have good relationships with class, because if you have bad relationships with your students, learning will not happen. You will have to push them, you will have to make them learn, which is not the nicest policy to both you and the students. There are things that you can do. They're easy, they're obvious, and they're absolutely necessary. First of all, call students by names. When you address them, always remember and call them by names. I'm sure that all of you do, but it might not be something obvious for some teachers who have experienced different studying themselves. Because I remember being a student, and most of the time I was called by my last name, and which is not very nice, not like less than half of the teachers actually knew my first name, and I was a kid, so call them by their names. This is always very nice. Nominate them. Smile. This is very important. I understand that some of you might be strict teachers. Try smiling. Remember, you have rules. Students know what they can do and cannot do. Your smile will not spoil them. Your smile will make them trust you. Sometimes your smile can be, ironic smile or something like this. But anyway, you have to be positive to people. So smile doesn't mean that you're weak or you have no authority. Smile means that you have a good relationship with your students. Do small talk to them. Ask them how they feel. Ask them how their day was, how their weekend was, what's happening in their lives. I sometimes made terrible discoveries about my students because, for example, I remember those kids who were signing contracts on the board. I had a couple of classes, and I discovered, because I did small talks, I discovered that some of them are facing terrible periods because their parents are divorcing, and they think that that's their fault. Some of them didn't have breakfast because their parents went out of, they just took off to work very early, and they didn't control whether the kid actually ate anything, and they didn't eat anything till the evening. And there were 12-year-olds, they had to eat. Some of them didn't sleep and watching some series at night, and then they felt sleepy all day. So these are the things that I discovered. I was a teacher, so I sometimes discovered some things that their parents didn't know. And I tried to do something with that. I talked about, like, okay, you have to eat. I even fed one of the kids who was always hungry because of that. I told the kid whose parents were divorcing that it wasn't her fault and she shouldn't like cry or worry about this. I was talking to that kid who didn't sleep at night and explained, okay, if you watch series at night and not sleep, you will not have good teeth because now your teeth are growing and you have to sleep to grow good teeth, you know. So, and I discovered lots of things that they actually wanted to talk about. So, and they trusted me because they felt that I cared. It doesn't mean that you have to talk to your kids or teenagers about their personal lives if they don't want to. But if they want to share, you might be the person who listens to them, and this will help them trust you. And this will help establish that positive atmosphere in class. And this is very important. Praise, very important. Praise students for doing something well, for hard work, for being attentive, for doing homework. Praise them when they deserve that. Do not praise for everything, but if the praise is deserved, you have to praise your students. This is endorphin and dopamine. These are the hormones that make us happy and that stimulate us to ask for more and want more next time. So when my teacher praises me for doing things nicely in class, I want to do them more. I want more praise. So remember to do that. This is important. Very important thing. You have to respect your students, especially when we talk about teenagers. Teenagers are kids, kind of kids, who want to be treated like adults. They hate to be treated like children. They will never forgive you if you treat them like children. But if you treat them respectfully, if you show that you care about their opinions, you will get respect from them. But it doesn't mean that only teenagers need respect. All the kids, adults, everyone needs respect. And they really appreciate if you do show it. So next, show that you care. It's connected to what I talked to you about small talks. It's like if you hear that your student is saying, okay, I'm going to have a competition on Sunday, I'm worried, and this is Friday. On Monday, ask them about how the competition went. They will be very happy to tell you. And it means that you care and they share. And you create that atmosphere of trust. Very important, something that might not be very obvious for us, for teachers, and it's very difficult online, but it's possible. It's very important to do eye contact. If you have face-to-face classes, when you talk to kids, you have to sit down and your eyes have to be on the same level. When we talk about kids, until they look into your eyes, there is no contact with them at all. So eye contact is very important. Unless your students are autistic or something, then they cannot maintain that eye contact. Like people who are not autistic or everything's okay with them, eye contact means contact. No eye contact means something's wrong. If the kids lie, they hide their eyes. So maintaining eye contact is very important. It helps establish good rapport. I already told you about how to get students interact. I told you about that sometimes I had classes when they hated each other and I couldn't change pairs, I couldn't make them work in groups. This is possible to fix if you do some team building. Team building, you can also Google this and to search for more team building activities, because I cannot show you a lot here. We have so many things to talk about, but team building work miracles. Team building activities. It means that students have to do something as a team together. And usually this is something fun. It could be a game, it could be a competition, it could be a project that they do together. But this is something that helps them start working as a team, meaning start tolerating each other, cooperating. But it has to be really, really fun. It has to be something students want to do. Because if you suggest an activity they don't want to do and you make them work together and they hate each other, it will not work. I had some games that were not actually connected to English, but because students really wanted to win, and in order to win, they had to communicate with each other and cooperate. And the game was really fun. So they had to start talking and working together. And they started tolerating each other. They didn't start liking each other, but at least nobody said to me, I'm not going to work with her, or something like this in the middle of my class. When we talk about online, this is why you need your cameras on, because if the camera is off, it's very difficult to make a team. Sometimes it works, but the camera is crucial here. It helps students start working in pairs and groups, and this is what you want as English language teachers. And it helped them tolerate their partners and feel comfortable around each other and in front of class. You might have a class where students don't want to say something because they know that they will be mocked at or laughed at by their partners, which is something I'm very strict about. When I notice something like this, I talk to my students and I explain that this is not appropriate, and making mistakes is normal. Making a mistake is not a crime. And we sometimes make mistakes because we don't know how to say something, but we try new things, or we use a grammar, grammar structure that we don't know how to use properly, but this is good that we're trying. And everyone makes mistakes, and even the teacher makes mistakes. Something that I did, when I write on board, I sometimes can make a mistake because the letters are huge, and when you're writing, you only see isolated words or pieces of phrase. And sometimes you write something, you step back, you look at what you have written, it's like, oh my God, there is a mistake on board. Oops. The obvious solution, like the solution for me, what I did when I was a school teacher, and what I sometimes do with my students, I say, okay, guys, your teacher has made a mistake. The person who finds the mistake first will get a high mark. And that was fun. They start reading what I wrote on the board, and they start searching for my mistake. They find the mistake, they get the mark. Everyone is happy. Do you think that they feel that they have a stupid teacher who makes mistakes on board? No, but this is another way for me to explain, guys, everyone makes mistakes. There are different reasons for mistakes. And even I make mistakes as a teacher. I'm a normal person. But making a mistake is not a crime. And no one is going to laugh at you if you say something, if you say something wrong, if you make a mistake. That is okay. If you create environment like this in your class where making a mistake is not a crime, students will feel more eager to talk. They will not be afraid to say something because they know that nobody's going to laugh at them. So this is something I'm very strict about. And when I notice that someone laughs at someone, I never tolerate that. And I show them that this behavior is inappropriate and even ugly. And if they respect you as a teacher, if they like you, if they like your lessons, and if they see that you're not happy with what they do, if you consider what they did inappropriate, they will change that. They will not continue doing that because they like you as a teacher. And when they like you, they want to please you. So this is a manipulation, but this is how things work. If you want to rule the class well, they need to like you. They need to like your lessons, and you need to like them too. So respect, liking each other, respecting works miracle in class. Something that I wanted to show you, what you can do online. So when we talk about offline team builders, icebreakers, you can Google, there are lots of them actually. But when we talk about online, it's much more difficult. But remember, we talked about that team builder is doing something together for the sake of fun. Not because the teacher wants us to do something, but because it's cool. There are some things that you can do. For example, you can take a group photo. You can show a list of things that students need to find in 1 minute in their flat when they're online, and take a group picture and everyone should have one item. And you can include some funny things like a cat, a roll of toilet paper, a cup, I don't know, a piece of bread, a fruit. And imagine that they all have to talk to each other and say, okay, guys, I have a roll of toilet paper, and I have a cat, and I will bring, a banana. So they need to exchange together in order to find out who has what and who will bring what and take this picture. And again, not because the teacher wants them to take a picture, because it's fun. We have to take a picture with funny things that we need to find in class. And it works really well. And this is a very good icebreaker and team builder. It can be a small project. For example, what I sometimes do is when I have young teenagers who are still kind of kids, not adults, but they know English quite well. For example, I can ask them to have 4 minutes and write a little poem together. I introduced a poem, this one, I think it was by Alan Milne or something like this, I'm not sure. I want to buy an animal, I'd like to buy a cat, but the dog is sure to bite that, so I can't buy that. And I asked them to write a mini poem starting with I want to buy an animal and find a picture online to illustrate that. Look at some poems that I've had from my students. And they wrote it together as teams. This one is my favorite, actually. Have a look at this. But these are for kids who know English really well, and they can make poems. I can read it for you if you like. So I want to buy an animal, a real dinosaur. I'd play with it and walk with it and feed it with Roquefort, the cheese. So why not? This is a good activity. But again, if your students, if you think that they will not like it, they don't like poems, they're teenagers who look bored, they will not do it. So you have to select the icebreakers and team builders that are adequate to the age and the needs of the students. But you can Google some, you can share some with your colleagues, and some of them work really, really well, really nicely. So this is one of the examples that you can use online. So icebreakers, team builders, creating positive atmosphere in class, classroom rules, following that rules, reminding about that rules, creating the rules together with your students, showing that you respect them, but you will not let them violate the rules. This is what makes learning predictable, safe, and fun for both you and your students. And this is something that will help you manage them really, really well. Something else we need to talk about is how to make the class learning controlled. One of the teacher's fears is to lose control. I remember that. One of my fears as well. So what you can do, first of all, establish the classroom routines. Everything that we talked about before that, this is a must. If you don't establish the routines, you will not control the class. Next, remember, predictable means safe. Children, especially children, they feel safe only when they know what's going to happen. That's why in kids' class, you start lessons with a hello song, or doing something that you do every class, something repetitive. It calms the students down. When you have clear routines at the beginning, but not only kids need routines, everyone needs routines. So clear routines, they help feel safe. That's why a lot of students, they were very happy to come back to learning when the war started in Ukraine, because it means doing something normal. And when you do something normal, routines are something normal, you feel safe. When we came back to work after the break during the war, we felt so much better when we started teaching because we came back to routines. So next, follow the rules. Don't let them break the rules. Very important when we talk about kids, they cannot sit for a long time. They lose concentration. They cannot play games all the time. I mean, active games, they get tired. So as the teacher, you have to juggle and you have to change the activity. So remember when to settle and stir. If you see that they're losing concentration, play an active game to make it like to help their brains rest. Then they start focusing. If you see that they are too active and a little bit difficult to control, settle them down, do a quiet activity. So this is very important, settling and stirring. So watch how they feel, change the activities in time, and use attention grabbers. So attention grabbers, it means that when they're discussing something, for example, they're talking to their partners or they're doing a noisy activity, you have to think of how to grab their attention, for example, without shouting. There might be lots of options for that. You can actually Google attention grabbers. Very popular thing is there is a phrase which is familiar to your students. You say the beginning, they say the end, and they know that this is the time when they have to stop what they're doing. For example, mac and cheese, you say it, they say everybody freeze. It can be any phrase, Google them, there are lots of them. Teach your students when you start saying that phrase, they have to say the ending of the phrase and stop doing what they're doing. You can use other things that do not include the voice. For example, when they're noisy, I don't know, discussing something, walking, blah, blah, blah. You can use clapping, and you can use different clapping patterns. When they hear clapping, they need to know that they have to repeat the clap. For example, you clap, they repeat. You clap, they repeat. First, just a few of them start clapping because they notice that you clap. Others are talking, busy. But then more and more of them notice the clapping, and you end up with everyone repeating your clap, and you don't have to say anything at all. I love the attention grabbers when you don't have to speak and you don't have to raise your voice. So Google attention grabbers in order to help students notice that they need to stop a noisy activity, that they need to listen to you. And my golden rule, I never start speaking until I notice that everyone's looking at me. Eye contact, because if they don't look at me, I don't know if they listen. And if they don't listen to me, they didn't hear. They have to repeat my instruction again. And I'm not a radio. I repeat my instruction once. But before I do that, I make sure that everybody listens. And your students get used to that. You do not speak until everyone listens to you. Isn't it nice? So, but it depends on you. So you have to teach them. Okay, something else. Very important. You teach English, you want them to start speaking English to you. And a lot of teachers end up in the situation when they say something in English and their students respond in their first language. This is not the situation we want. We want everyone to speak English. The golden rule is, if you want your students to speak English, you have to teach them. So if you teach them classroom language that they can use to talk to you and their partners, and if you know that they know the phrases because you taught them, you can remind them about the phrases and demand them to use the phrases. So when I hear my students saying something not in English, and I know that they can say it in English, I will not respond. I will ask them, say it in English. But I can only say that when I know that I taught them this and they know how to say it. And again, you can have classroom language posters around your class. And when they say something not in English, you can point to the posters, even without saying something, and ask them to say it in English. They get used to it and they start talking English to you. But again, you have to be consistent. You cannot demand them speak in English if they cannot say this in English, but if you know that they can, because you taught the phrases, demand this, and eventually your students will speak English to you. So what you can do is, I just Googled classroom language posters. See how many results I got. I don't like this one with the toilet. Probably not in my classroom, but there are lots of things that you can use, steal, borrow. You can create yourself. Like, look at this one. Hello, may I come in? the teacher just took a piece of paper. They took 3 board markers and they wrote that poster. It took 20 seconds. So you don't have to produce nice things, but this is the poster that was in the classroom from the first day, and it stayed there and it worked well. So you can Google things. You can quickly produce things your own. You don't have to be a talented artist or something. Just write it on the piece of paper. Remind students about the classroom language. Praise them for using English in class. Consider students' needs very quickly. When we talk about kids, what is the main activity for learning? What is the main thing that they like? How do they learn? What is the main activity? Yes, play. So is it a good idea to talk about grammar rules with kids? Nah. When we talk about teenagers, will you play with them all the lesson, or maybe just one game if they deserve and like it? Something like this. So teenagers like communicating. So it's a good idea, especially when they like talking to each other and they have good relationships with their partner, like with their classmates. So consider their needs. If you consider your students' needs, if they do not suffer during learning because they have to do something that is not their typical activity, the learning will go well. And you can actually alter things to make them more attractive for kids. I've shown this to lots of teachers, but this is something I'm very proud of. This is the class I had lots of problems with. They didn't listen to me. They didn't want to speak English. They didn't want to learn. That was a trouble for me. But here they work like angels. They do a stupid task, not very interesting, like a mechanical activity when they need to ask questions and their partner answers. Why they do it? Because I allowed them to sit on windows. That's it. So sometimes you have to change some little things to turn a normal, boring activity into something fun. They were sitting on that window for 20 minutes. That were the best 20 minutes of my life with that class, because they were doing the activities because they liked sitting on the windows. So it doesn't mean that you will allow your students to sit on the windows all the time, but you will try to find the things that your students like and exploit it to make them do the normal tasks, which are boring if you sit at your desk, but fun if you sit on the window or on the floor on the carpet. So if you look here, so I'm sitting on the carpet with my students. It doesn't mean that I like sitting on the carpet, but I know that they learn best and they will do an exercise better on the carpet. That's why I'm sitting with them there. So think about what they like doing, how they like doing. Sometimes I had groups of tired teenagers and I allowed them to sit on the floor. And for some reason, on the floor, they worked better than at the desks doing some tasks. So maybe such little changes will help. Create motivation systems for your students. So they can be different. You can Google, there are lots of them. I'm not going to talk in detail because I have to finish, but something that I really want to say is be careful with motivation system. Your system has to be motivation, not punishment. I'm going to show you a couple of things that I've seen lots of teachers use. This is the task. Like when students do something wrong, that guy, I don't know, that person, that little man, it makes one step closer to the shark. And eventually the shark will eat the man. Here, I have the word dictation. And every time students misbehave or do something wrong, I cross out one letter. And if I cross out all the letters, they will write a dictation as a punishment. Yeah. And the last one is I have stars near the names. Every time they do something wrong, I delete a star. I hate all these motivation tools. Why? Because this is not motivation, this is punishment. And why, if someone did something wrong, I cross out the letter and then the whole class has to write a dictation? Is it fair? This is a terrible feeling. And yes, they will probably stop misbehaving, but nobody will be happy with such a lesson. Same about this. This is just, I don't know, the shark is pure violence for me. My idea, and the psychologists say that it works better if you punish students by not providing them with something positive. For example, your students know that if they behave well and they work well, at the end of the class, they can choose the game they will play the last 5 or 10 minutes. But if they misbehave, blah, 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 there will be no game. You see the difference? I'm not punishing them with dictations. The shark is not eating them. I don't remove stars. So your punishment has to be humane. Punishment, it means not doing something that they like. If they know, so, or for example, there will be no pizza party at the end if they don't do homework. I mean, at the end of the semester or something like this. So please be careful with punishment. Do not make the punishment punishment. And do not punish students for something that they do not deserve, like punish the whole class because like 2 students misbehave. So this is unfair. So make the system, the motivation system positive. It works so much better and it's so humane, and they will respect you as a fair teacher and they will not be afraid of you. So I'm sorry because it took me a little bit longer. This is everything that I wanted to say for today. I didn't talk in detail about adults, but just a couple of words. Adults need routines. They need to know the rules. Adults need icebreakers and team builders as well, because they feel uncomfortable talking to unknown people. But if you do some ice breaking, it works well. They start liking each other and talking to each other. Do not use very childish icebreakers with adults. Do not make them feel stupid. Respect their adulthood. Do not treat adults or teenagers like children. Such simple rules will make your life so much easier. And we have 1 minute for questions. If you would like to ask me about something that I haven't talked about today, please feel free to write questions. Okay, enlarge other pictures on the slide. You mean these pictures? Yeah, motivation systems, projects. Yeah, do not take pictures of my kids because probably I'm not allowed to spread them over the net, but Google. There are lots of ideas online, motivation systems, icebreakers, team builders. Think of what students might like. If you think that something might be stupid, do not use it. So everything has to be safe and fun. If it's safe and fun, it's safe and fun. Okay, thank you very much. If you write down more questions, I will probably provide you with some answers at the end of the session. What is your attitude to stickers? Yes, my attitude is good if the sticker is deserved. And students like stickers. I use stickers quite a lot. Thank you very much. So if I missed some questions, can you please drop them again to the chat? And I think I'm actually ready to give my word to Yulia. Yulia, I apologize for taking it longer. I will buy 2 coffees for you, okay?
Thank you very much, Lidiya. I think I've drank too much coffee today already.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your wonderful session. Could you?
And it was nice to see all the familiar and new faces, and I'm very happy that you're safe and sound. So please, yeah.